What up, YouTube? It's Aaron, your personal driver. Today I have news for you. I don't normally do news, to be honest with you guys. I leave that up to other channels. A lot of channels do news. Specifically, the Arbitration does news pretty much every day. But this one looks like it slipped under the radar, so I've been following it for a couple of days. No one else has really talked about it, so I want to talk about it. If you guys remember a long time ago, first off, homemade tea. Let me get a little drink of that. Yum yum. My throat's already a little dry. Man, I have a whole I have a whole video to get through. Also, Nate is asleep right there, so he can wake up at any time. Dun 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 dun. Anyway, I was saying something relative importance. Oh, we're talking about the Supreme Court. So, a long time ago, I said that forcing Uber drivers into arbitration was illegal, and a lot of people made fun of me. And it turns out they were right. There was a Supreme Court decision. I have it here. Epic Systems versus Lewis, and they said that arbitration clauses, it was a 5-4 decision. So they claimed that you can enforce the arbitration issues. Richard R. in the house. Frank M. the Tank in the house. But 2 days ago, a new ruling came out, and a lot of people, including myself, considered it a surprising ruling, saying that transportation companies fall under the exception to the law, and you cannot force arbitration on independent contractors. No limitation. Rideshare in the house. Good to see you again, man. It's good to always have you in here. Timothy Wong in the house. For those of you who don't know who No Limitation Rideshare is a new YouTuber. Some people are calling him the baby rideshare revolution. I think it's a little unfair. Uberman in the house, although he is similar a lot to him, but he's got his own flair. Rob Hammersmith in the house helps drivers, but only drivers who have taken a rider across state lines, making that work interstate and allowing the Fed to get involved. Maybe. So that is actually, Rob is on top of it. That is the problem with the ruling, so the part that has not been defined yet. So those of you who don't know, my spare time, I am a Supreme Court junkie. In college, all of my electives were something having to do with Supreme Court law. I love reading briefs. I'm addicted to it. And even for me, although to be fair, I'm not a professional, I don't have a law degree or anything like that. Even this one was a little confusing, so I'm gonna try to break it down for you. So let's go over here. This is the old ruling. It's still relatively new because here's the thing, I was right until May. I'll put it that way. It's illegal to force you into arbitration. Everyone has a constitutional right to sue Fred Waller in the house, at least until May 21st of last year, 2018. 2018, the biggest garbage year in history. So the Supreme Court, with Neil Gorsuch, the Trump appointee, writing the opinion here, said that employers could not get out of arbitration clauses. Robert May in the House. So two things to keep in mind here. One, it was a 5-4 ruling, so if the Republicans had not stolen a Supreme Court justice from the Democrats, this probably wouldn't have passed. The second thing to think about is that up until this point, Uber was illegally forcing us into arbitration. And the other thing to think about is this has to do with employees specifically. So technically, even this ruling didn't apply to contractors, but a lot of people basically said, we're done with this conversation. We have to take care of it. Rideshare down in the house. And a lot of people said that I was wrong. And they were right. In the end, the Supreme Court ruled against my decision. But this came out 2 days ago. The Supreme Court case here, New Prime versus Dominic Oliveira. As always, links in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. Ravy in the house. And this is the decision here. Okay. If you want to just go to this blog, is a great place to learn about the Supreme Court because it's like the Wikipedia of the SCOTUS. The interesting thing about this is that Gorsuch also wrote this opinion. So he both wrote the opinion in FL-ybyc Systems, which said that we have to have arbitration, and he also wrote the opinion in New Prime, which was, by the way, an 8-0 decision. So they 100% agree with this. The trucker daddy in the house, aka John in Quebec, interrupting Bob Ross. Okay. Oh, hold on, guys. I have a little thing here. Let's see if I can do this. Does this work? Yeah, look at this new feature I have. Woo! I don't know why I have this, but I can do this now if I want to. Can I clear it? Yeah. So look, okay, this is important. It's an 8-0 decision, and Gorsuch wrote it, which I thought was totally weird because Gorsuch also wrote the 5-4 decision right here. See, Justice Gorsuch. Or Greensboro wrote a dissenting opinion. Gorsuch wrote the opinion. So the same justice did both. Okay, so what happened in this one? Why is this one different? So I don't really care about why the lawsuit was brought. You guys can research that stuff yourself. To me, that's unimportant. But what happened was truckers constantly cross state lines. So what is under federal scrutiny is the Federal Arbitration Act, which was passed in 1929. Okay, and this is the important part because this is what was ruled on before. It generally requires parties to honor agreements to arbitration disputes. Can someone recap real quick? You're a trucker, man. You need to know this. Okay, quick recap. So in May 21st, the Supreme Court ruled that you don't have a constitutional right to have class action lawsuits and that companies can enforce arbitration clauses. That's important for truckers. As you know, most truckers are independent contractors, but also for Uber and Lyft drivers because we're supposedly independent contractors too. And there were a lot of class action lawsuits that drivers were filing against Uber and Lyft. And so that was a pretty big decision. Well, a new one came out, and that said that there is an exception and you can't uprule it. So the legal argument, this is where I'm reading. That's a bad arrow. That's a better arrow. That's pointing the wrong direction. That's still a terrible arrow. Let's try that again. Get the point on point. There we go. That's where I'm reading. The legal arguments harken back to the Federal Arbitration Act of 1925. Oh, the 1925. I thought it was 1929. My bad. Which contains a provision that would exempt contractors of employment for transportation workers from arbitration, hereby allowing workers to file his grievance, or the worker to file his grievance in federal or state court. In this case, there was some question as to whether the provision applied to contracts between carriers and independent contractors. So here's the thing. What they're saying here is that independent contractors are not, do not fall under the employment part of it, right? There's an independent contractor exception. And so what this is from the ruling. There's a dispute over waiting time. That's never paid to drivers filed a class action, if I remember correctly. That's a different. That is a different court matter. But this is a quote here. A court should determine whether the exclusion applies before ordering arbitration, the Supreme Court said. A court's authority to compel arbitration under the Act does not extend to all private contractors, no matter how emphatically they may express a preference for arbitration. So I will leave links to the decisions in the chat so you guys can check it out for yourself. This is FL-ybyc Systems and this is New Prime. So I hope I did my best to explain that. So let me break that down for you for what that means for Uber and Lyft drivers. We are technically still independent contractors, and not so much on the West Coast, but on the East Coast, you travel between states a lot. And so anytime you travel outside of your state for any reason having to do with commerce, you engage in what's called interstate commerce. And so the federal government has a right to regulate you. that was important because states' rights, people who go states' rights, states' rights, state rights, they forget that states only have the right to regulate internal stuff. Okay, that's why they have police forces. That's why they have driver's licenses and speed limits and stuff like that, and roads that are not federal. In the Constitution, there is an interstate commerce clause. So anytime someone cries state rights, just roll your eyes and realize that that person is uneducated. Okay. Anytime anything crosses state lines for any reason, even if it's hot dog buns, one of the most famous interstate commerce Supreme Court decisions had to do with a hotel that said that they were white only, no blacks were allowed, and that because they didn't engage in interstate commerce, the federal government couldn't regulate them. Well, guess what? They got hot dog buns from out of state, and because they got hot dog buns from out of state, the federal government said, ha, interstate commerce, federal law applies to you. And so the question, as Rob very smartly and quickly put up there, is, do Uber drivers and Lyft drivers and rideshare drivers in general, funny how you say hot dog buns, I just saw the Oscar Mayer Wiener here in Wisconsin, deflated to be exact, or Delafield, that must be a town to be exact. Do Uber drivers engage in interstate commerce? And first off, I don't think it matters. This is my opinion. This isn't like Neil Gorsuch didn't write this down. This is just my personal opinion on it. It doesn't matter because Uber, the company, engages in interstate commerce, meaning that Uber operating in California is not differentiated from Uber operating in New York or Florida or Wisconsin, etc. Now, the argument might be the actual independent contractors don't cross state lines. So maybe, but I don't think that that's very compelling. I think that by definition, drivers are engaged in interstate commerce, especially on the East Coast. Like if you live in some of those smaller states in the Northeast, you can go in and out of states all the time. Do you know how often people go from DC to Florida or from Rhode Island to any other state? Yeah, all the time. And even in big states like, like California or Texas, you still cross state lines all the time. Taxi drivers do too. Yes. So, if that's the case, and if Uber drivers are similar to truck drivers, which I believe they are, we should be able to get granted an exemption from the arbitration clause that Uber has on us. That being said, at this point, that is just a theory, and until someone challenges that in court, it's just what we call speculation. So I think this is devastating for Uber and Lyft because they want to avoid class action lawsuits because the class action lawsuits have been costing them so much money. Milwaukee to O'Hare all the time. Yeah. I mean, but my question is, Timothy Wong, can you have a class action lawsuit with everybody or can just you sue? Okay. Once you pass the Illinois background check, you are cleared to drive in Iowa, Wisconsin, and Indiana. Yeah, so there you go. But the question, no limitation, is not do you specifically, does it mean everyone who's an Uber driver automatically qualify, right? So does every independent contractor have to prove that they've crossed the state line just once? Or is it just by the fact that you are an Uber driver that you qualify for the exemption? Now, here's the thing. The reason I think the Supreme Court, dude, it came out 8-0. Okay, so like this isn't like it didn't squeak by. It wasn't just like the liberal judges or just the conservative judges. Literally every judge except for what's her name, RBG, Ruder Ginsburg, because she's sick. Maybe that's not true. Let's see who voted on it before I just say that. Which justices did? Oh, it's not going to say. Oh, Kavanaugh. So the rapist did not. The rapist judge didn't get to consider the case. So that's 8-0. So Ginsburg did qualify it. R.W. Boyle won in the House. At Tahoe, I deliver people to Nevada from California all the time. Yeah, there you go. So let me finish my thought here. So the reason 8-0 was just a slam dunk for independent contractors was because in this specific case, we're talking about truckers. And everyone knows that truckers cross state line. Like that's like widely accepted. There's no real question about it. Everyone accepts that if you're a trucker, you cross state lines. Even though in some states, specifically like California or Texas, large states, there are some truckers who never leave the state lines. But in my opinion, and I am not a Supreme Court judge, but those truckers still qualify for the exemption. Just by the nature that you're a trucker, you have it every day. Yeah. So using that same logic, I think it's safe to say that by the nature that you're an independent contractor for Uber, you qualify for the exemption. You just crashed? You mean like in your car or on your computer? Hopefully you didn't crash. Hopefully you're safe. Hopefully you're safe, Timothy. So that's great news because we were making really good progress with some of these class action lawsuits. And this is ironic. Okay, a lot of the class action lawsuits that drivers have filed against Uber are misclassification lawsuits. So what does that mean? Misclassification lawsuits are arguing that we are employees, not contractors. So it's funny, because they're suing for things like unemployment insurance and medical insurance and higher, minimum wages and stuff like that. So if that's true, it might be the most ironic twist in history that drivers get together, they form a class action lawsuit, they win the right to reclassify themselves as employees, and then therefore lose the right to use class action lawsuits. Since it only applies to independent contractors, not employees. So that might be like the ultimate irony of these class action lawsuits. Now, to be fair, a lot of them are about other things too. And including my favorite class action lawsuit, which is what Trucker Daddy was talking to about a little bit earlier, which is where they were suing collectively that about the arbitration clause. Because there's like it's something right now like a 10-year backlog for Uber, meaning that if you file arbitration against Uber, you have a 10-year wait line before they get to your case. And so because of the long wait lines, they've sued. They're suing in a class action lawsuit that it's taking too long to arbitrate, which is also pretty funny. But that is basically all I have planned out for you guys today. I just wanted to give you a quick update on that and give you my 2 cents on it. Is there anything else that you guys particularly want to talk about? If not, I can get out of here. Like always, in the description below are the articles if you want to get more information for yourself. I always say, don't ever believe anything I say. Just think, you guys gotta make me think I'm an idiot. And don't believe anything I say, and then check it out for yourselves. That's always the safest thing. I kind of don't want to get off the live stream until I know for a fact that Timothy is okay. I'm worried about him. I hope that he's talking about his computer crash, nothing else. I guess I could put this back on for you so you guys can see it. This is the wrong one. If you guys want to read it. In some Canadian provinces, taxi drivers get minimum wage. That makes them employees, not independent, in my humble opinion. Well, Trucker Daddy, I don't know a lot about Canadian law. First off, the idea of independent contractors is pretty new. Originally, the idea of employment was just employment. There was like any kind of work is work. And so, it's as far as laws go, it's a relatively new idea that you have an independent contractor. And then therefore, I'm just scrolling through this so you guys want to go back to the video and read it yourself. You can do that if you're wondering what I'm doing. So the idea that there's 2 different kinds of employees is relatively new in law. In my personal opinion, I think that all Uber drivers are employees. I think that Uber does not give their contractors enough freedom to be considered contractors. And on top of that, I don't think Uber drivers sign contracts. Let me ask you guys a question. If you think you're an independent contractor, when does your contract end with Uber? Let me ask a follow-up question to that. Can Uber change the contract without your permission? The answer to that is yes. Spoiler alert. Can you negotiate with Uber over things like your per mile wage and compensation and medical insurance? No, you can't. So because they exact control over so much of your driving life, and you don't have any of the other benefits of being an independent contractor, I don't see how you can possibly say you're an independent contractor. How did dinner turn out last night? It was pretty good. I like spicy curry, but it was fine. It was good. It wasn't very spicy. It was a little bit more sweet than I like. But the kids actually ate the curry, which is crazy. They normally don't do it. And my wife didn't really like it. But dinner was good. Did you watch White Duck? You know, you can always go over there. This is the name of the channel. For those of you who don't know, I started a new Uber channel where I eat in front of everybody every night. As an independent, you can't deal for anything. Well, you should. If you're an independent contractor, you should be able to negotiate everything, at least in the United States. Let's look. Dinner with the Powells. Let's see if we even make a Google search, or if we're still so small that Google can't find us. So here's my personal driver version of it. Did I spelled dinner with the Powells wrong? Well, at least I made it to YouTube. Turn off the volume here. So yeah, I'll send the link to that if you guys are interested in my other channel. Thanks for the promotion, White Duck. You know what I forgot? I'm sorry. White Duck in the house. Let me go back to this, scroll through this here. Different opinions on it. I like being an independent contractor because I don't do everything this app tells me to do. I need this app to do what I want to do. Here's the thing. I want to be an independent contractor. I definitely do not want to be an employee. I said that from the beginning. I just think personally, as it stands right now, we don't qualify as independent contractors. And there's I mean that's a difference. I want to be a contractor. I just don't think we are. So yeah, you know, that is what it is too, right? And I agree. I need this app to let me have my freedoms. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So that's the entire decision. So if you guys want to rewatch this video and slow that down, you can read it for yourself. Or in the chat, I've linked the briefings in there too. Although I don't know how many rideshare drivers enjoy reading Supreme Court briefings. Taxi driving, I prefer cash work. Working Uber, I would force to pay sales tax, therefore income tax. It's a trade-off I can live with. Well, the nice thing is if you have taxi. I know, I'm worried about Timothy too. Oh, is Nate waking up? Wow, look at him. No, he went back to sleep. I thought he was up. So in the U.S. Trucker Daddy, in a lot of states, Colorado being a specific exemption to it, in order to take cash rides, you need commercial insurance or a specific taxi medallion. Otherwise, it's illegal. In the United States, they create fake demand for taxis by limiting who can operate a taxi, which is one of the problems Uber had at the very beginning when they got their app. Was making an exception to that taxi law. So here, I wouldn't take cash rides unless you have commercial insurance, or you're in a state that doesn't require you to have commercial insurance. But even then, I still think you should have it. You don't want to get in a car accident with a customer. Setting up in some places like California, for example, it's illegal to take cash rides. So yeah, obviously cash is king. Cash is always the best, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should do it. Man, I wanted to stay until Timothy got back. But anyway. I think I'm going to go out, guys. I'm going to head out. Deuces. Short video for today. but I thought it was important information, and I thought, so now you guys know. If you have a problem with Uber, you have a constitutional right to get other drivers together and to sue the crap out of them. I still scratch my head at your insurance. Uber pays for your commercial insurance. I don't have. So yeah, the United States does a lot of stupid things. You are right about that. Canada does a lot of things smarter than the United States. And insurance in general is one of them. Not just even car insurance, but just um, medical insurance. You guys do a better job over there too. Okay, so for you, trucker daddy, here is my video on insurance. So I explain a little bit better. I can show you a picture too. So you have to pay for your own insurance, trucker driver? No, I don't. I have rideshare insurance through my private insurance. Yeah, no problem. But here's a picture of it to kind of help. If it loads. Okay, so you got, Uber calls it 3 stages, but honestly, it's 5 stages if you include offline as a stage. And Uber says that this is all period 3, but for legal purposes, a lot of insurance companies consider this 2 separate periods. So if you consider all of these different stages, then there's 5. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Although Uber only claims that there are 3 periods, so I don't know how you want to technically talk about it. And period 1 is barely insurance, and it's only liability. So it's not even the driver and the driver's property are not covered under period 1, which is why a lot of rideshare drivers get additional insurance. And then here's where the $1 million policy comes in. When you're en route to pick up a driver, and when you have a rider in the car. The reason I state that there's 5, if you notice here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there is a little bit of question. What happens if you end the ride and there's still a customer in your car? Either the customer cancels, or you pull up to the house and you hit end on the screen a little too fast. So like, let's say you pull over to the side of the road, you drop the customer off, you hit end trip, and then you get rear-ended by a car behind you. Are you still covered? And there's a little bit of no one. Yes, maybe. And so I would consider that an additional 5th period over here. That's just how I think about it, though. So there you go. There's a mini explanation on insurance. Tax insurance here has gotten too expensive. A lot of folks are giving up their individual cars and working for the man. Yeah, I'm still waiting on my Ohio state license, man. It is scary. And here's the thing, trucker driver, or trucker daddy, not everyone who does rideshare knows how the insurance works. And so they don't know when they have the app on and they're driving that they're not insured. I think the most dangerous thing you can do as a rideshare driver is leave the app on without a ping on the freeway. I think that's a terrible idea. I think you should always turn your app off on the freeway, because you have no coverage. No coverage. If you hit somebody else, it'll cover them, but your car's done. And your personal insurance won't cover you if your app's on. That's the first thing they're going to ask. So yeah, it is pretty scary. I agree with you there. So I'm glad I could answer that question. Anyone else got any questions? All right. Well, with that, I will end the live stream, guys. Have a good one. Don't forget, tonight at the dinner with the Powells at 6 o'clock, we're having ribeye. Yum, yum, ribeye. So if you want to stop by and watch us on the other channel, I appreciate it, guys. If not, until next time, deuces.